Everybody needs a little help sometime. No one stands alone. Makes no difference if you're just a child like me, or a king upon the throne. For there are no exceptions. We all stand in the line. Everybody needs a friend. Let me tell you of mine. He's my forever friend. My leaving never friend. From nightest night to rainbow's end, he's my forever friend.
But there's one important day, the most important day in our family is called what I refer to as the High Holy Day. It's not Easter, and it's not Christmas. The High Holy Day is St. Patrick's Day. And our calendars all revolve around that very important day. And I just wanted to note that last year, either some of you probably were at the parade or you're certainly watching it on television, but Mary Higgins Clark served as the Grand Marshal at the St. Patrick's Day Parade last year. So beyond that being just a phenomenal honor, they couldn't have chosen a better Grand Marshal to celebrate the 250th St. Patrick's Day Parade, so we're most proud of her. The last thing I'd say, and I'd be remiss, and my father would probably kill me, as Father Darcy said, Dad is mentioned in a lot of Mary's books. He actually thinks he should get some royalties for his name frequently being mentioned, Mary and Carol, so you should think about that. And in the last book, Dad actually has a speaking part, so he's on cloud 9 on this last book by Mary. So to the two greatest ladies that could possibly be here, I'm honored to introduce you.
Well, thank you, Father, and thank you, Una, for that lovely and generous introduction. The Nearys and the Clarks have been friends for how many years, Jimmy? You can count. I think since you opened Nearys on 57th Street, and if it's at all possible, unless the book is set in Africa, Nearys is in the book. And this last book I gave Jimmy a speaking part in. And Love Music Loves to Dance, you solved the crime. So, Jimmy is very important to my books. And we are delighted to be here in this beautiful chapel. And with the work that the SMA fathers do, we're all aware of it. And if we're not, we can see it on the walls of the people they serve so well, the talented and beautiful people in Africa whom they have been serving. Well, is it 150 years? Is that what I've been? Which is simply incredible. As a I was a flight hostess with Pan American in 1949, and I give away my age. I have I have no little secrets about it. But in those days, I flew to Africa, and it was French Gold Coast, it was French West Africa, it was the Belgian Congo. So I'm aware of Africa, all those nearly 60 years ago, or over 60 years ago. So to see all the work that is being done there, and I know Father and I talked about the fact that when you have had a mission in Africa, I've spoken with a nun friend of mine who was in Africa for many years, and she said, my heart is in Africa. She has spent so many years there, and even though she's retired, she said she goes back every summer, and she can't wait to go back. Incidentally, and then we'll really kind of start talking. She had been a novelist when I was at Villa Maria Academy 1,000 years ago. And she wrote to me years ago, 20 years ago, and said, "Dear Mary, we're all so proud of your success. I am now teaching Native American boys in Arizona. However, you clearly did not listen when Mother St. Margaret of the Angels explained the difference between to lay and to lie." And she ran the whole thing out for me. And I wrote backwards and said, "Best friends." So here we are, Carol and I. Hello, Carol.
Hello, Mom. Yes, it's great to be here, and that was a nice introduction. It was really wonderful. Because I think back when I first started writing, I was at an event in Florida. They had a fundraiser. They brought a number of authors down, and they had dinners in people's homes. People paid to go to the dinners, with one author each dinner. Well, my couple I was with, they had the dinner on their yacht, which wasn't so bad, but they had hired a photographer as each.
I wasn't on the yacht.
Yeah, sorry, Mom. But the guy, the man, kept saying, "Say hello here to Susan Clark. Say hello, Susan." And I kept saying, "Hello, hello." And finally, his wife overheard it, and she looked at me, rolled her eyes, and whispered in his ear, "It's Nancy." So, aside from being called Mary many, many times, but again, thank you, Una, and being grateful.
That's like when I wrote Strangers Watching, and I was on a radio program, and I was introduced as the author of The Strangers Looking. Halfway through the program, he thanked me as the author of The Strangers Waiting, and at the end, he thanked me as the author of The Strangers Lurking. I said, "You're a walking thesaurus." Oh, he said, "Thank you."
Well, people sometimes ask where we get our ideas, and talking about John and my mother's anniversary 15 years ago, a guy wrote to me, and now you get emails, but he wrote to me, he wanted to be my butler. And listen, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment in New York. I mean, I'd love to have a butler, but he enclosed a story about the school he'd gone to and what a humble servant should do. And anyway, I put the letter aside, and it was right when they were getting married, and then there was an article in People magazine about the wedding. And he looked up John Hunt, who moved from Ridgewood. He got my stepbrother and said, "You know, I wrote to Carol about being her butler, and I haven't heard back." He goes, "Oh, okay, I'll hear the message." The next day he called back, "What about that butler job?" You know, and he kept calling, and he turned out to be really weird, which is very good for a mystery writer. So I thought I'd use a butler school in a book, and I was in London for something, and I called the guy who was the most famous butler school and asked if I could pay the audit classes. I thought I'd use a butler school in a book. He started yelling at me, "No, you can't. People try and copy me all the time. You can't do it, blah, blah, blah." He hung up the phone. So that's when I took my mother's first piece of advice about writing, which is, if someone's mean to you, make them a victim in your next book. So, everybody thinks she's so nice.
You don't need a psychiatrist. You just figure how to kill that person. And disguise them sufficiently, of course. And then you get all your meanness out and you get paid for it. It really works out all right. I know people say, "Do you use people you know in your books?" Well, yeah, you might say, I remember the first Where Are the Children when I did that one. I thought, I want the assistant in the real estate office, and I would see my friend up there. She wore cardigans, you know, matching sweater set, and I thought, that's the kind of person, because you're not better if you dress flashy or elegantly or simply. It's just that it's an expression of your personality. You're a different person if you're one of 5 kids than if you're an only child. You're something different. You're not better or worse, but you're different. So you try to say, who is this person? I do a biography of the people I have in my book. But of course, try to be careful. And in one book I wrote, when I get the first copy of that book, I read it as though I'm reading someone else's novel. I'm no longer looking at the manuscript or the page group saying, oh, this is a better word than that word. I'm reading it as a book. And my friend, both of them are gone now, they were older, but he was a very nice guy, but he was terribly stubborn. He was the kind who would let you know what clothes his father had been in, And I assume everyone in your family went to Harvard too, but not Yale. Yes, of course they did. Exactly where we all went, that kind of thing. He was stuffy but nice. But I had a character like that in this book. And he jumped across the pages at me. He couldn't listen. I said, how in the name of God did I come so close to the phone? How can I have done this on time? What can I say to them? And a few weeks later, my friend phoned and she said, Mary, John and I have read your new book. I said, yes. And she said, that character. I said, yes. John and I are so many people just like him. I said, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you. I will never come that close to the bone again.
Another source of material, things seem to always happen. I can never have a bad day. My mother says, use it in the book. Everything is grist for the mill. But last year, in the 1930s, my grandmother bought a plot at the Gate of Heaven for 72 people. I don't know what she was thinking, but 72 people, yes. So last year, my mother asked me to just drive her out there. So we went out with the stone, it's a big stone, 7 names on it. We said, pretty soon it's going to be the other side. Anyway, she said the stone looks like it should be cleaned. Let's go down to the office.
How about the pond in the office?
Oh, well, you can tell that.
Okay. There's a beautiful cemetery. It's the Archdiocesan Cemetery up in Westchester. And it has a pond outside the office. And there's a sign on it, no fishing. And everybody that I think are going to go fishing in the pond.
But we go in, and of course it's a solemn place, and she types in the name Clark, and she said, oh, you have 8 people in that grave. And I said, no, we don't, we have 7. And my mother starts saying, well, wait a minute, Daddy, there's maybe. And I said, oh, we're just there are 7 people. She goes, well, you had Vincent in 2003. We said, who's Vincent? So she went back and got the old ledger from the old days, where nothing was done by computer, and I could see my grandfather's name from 1947, all the listings, and then it had Vincent so-and-so, whenever in 2003, and we said, he's not ours. So she looked at another page, and she goes, oh, he was double booked. So she got to write out, and she write out his name on that. So we call him
floating around in that grave.
We call him our cousin Vinny now, but he still think he might be there, but he's welcome. There's plenty of room. But I had started retyping my mother's books. I grew up with her writing. When I was in 7th grade, she had a book come out about George Washington that she said the publishing company went out of business. Not many copies sold, but it proved she could write a book. And then she tried a suspense novel. And then that book was re-released as Mount Vernon Love Story several years ago. But after she became successful as a suspense writer, we realized we didn't have our own copies in the family. So she called the book tracing service and said, can you find any copies? She got a call a month later, and they had a copy. She went down and paid $100 for it. It was originally $2.95. And she opened it up and screamed. It was the autographed copy she'd given to her boss, but obviously given it away somewhere. I'll let you pick up on that.
For Clarence, Alona, and Claren, hope you enjoy the fruits of my moonlighting. Love, Mary. And Clarence, I worked with him, by then he was retired. And Clarence was the tightest guy I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he could chase a nickel down the park, if his life was in danger. And I said, I'm going to call Clarence, and I'm going to say, Clarence, I know you won't want to part with that book, but Simon Schuster is planning to republish it. Clarence, they will pay you $1,000. See what
I mean? She wants to do that.
My daughter was an assistant prosecutor in Maryland, who is now the judge, said he killed himself. I said, that's the point. She said, we might be able to do that.
Reagan Riley is a private detective, and the movie Decker Halls has Reagan and Elvira together. So
she's even in my new book.
She's in your new book?
Yeah, I put Elvira in the new book. I think she could.
Again?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. See.
That was this one I'm setting in Marlborough, and because I love New Jersey, and I get so mad at the impression people have of it. So I would set 7 books in New Jersey. to try to let people understand that this is a beautiful state. Girl was in New Jersey as well. Well, going briefly back to myself, people say, when did you decide to be a writer? I did not decide to be a writer. It was decided for me. From the time I could put two words together, I was writing poetry, I was writing skits and making my brothers perform them. I was writing native plays for the neighborhood, and my mother gave us a velvet, those portières, I think they call them, on the screen. So we had them in the garage, in our garage, the plays that I was writing. And all through school, I did nothing but write. I wrote in science, I wrote in math. And I went back to the Maria Academy, and Mother St. Thomas, the math and science teacher, was 90 years old. She was sitting in a wheelchair. She never got her legs. She knew the woman after she had seen the girl all those years before. And she looked at me with those clear gray eyes and she said, "Miss Higgins, you were a dreadful math student." And I had 15 bestsellers under my belt at that point, but I curtsied as we did in those old days and said, "God bless your memory, Reverend John." And of course I shouldn't have been doing short stories, but I just wanted to write. It was all I ever wanted to do. And going quickly, my father had died when I was 11, and I went to secretariat school rather than college. I graduated from college, from Fordham College, when I was 50 years old, because at that point, after I sold the first book, I said, well, the youngest is 16, so I could stay in New York a couple of nights and go to school, and I did get my degree from Fordham when I was 50. But it worked out very well for me, because at 18, I got a job in an advertising agency as secretary to the creative director. So I had a 3-year tutorial in advertising, which served me wonderfully well when I went back to work at 36, when I was widowed, because I would be taking notes in all the creative meetings. Why Life Look Post and Copies were the best magazines at that time to advertise in, why the inside front cover, why this caption worked and why this did not. And I was learning so much that it was wonderful that I did it. And then I was Pan American flight hostess for a year, which meant I saw the world at 21 in 1949. I was in Europe, Africa, and Asia, which was absolutely glorious. And it's as though my mother wasn't scheduling, because I got all the trips. People were there 3 years and hadn't interacted, and I was in Africa in 6 weeks after I started the job. And then I was engaged. I had just gotten engaged to Carol's father. So he said, fly for a year, get it out of your system. I'll take my mother to drive in movies. We got married at Christmas. People were more generous then. So I had my year, and then I got married. And I was perfectly happy to, because I was so anxious. I wanted to get to writing. I wanted to get down to the business of writing. Just one quick story about being a Pan American hostess. In those days, it was the Constellation and the propeller planes. There was one girl to 9 men, because you had a pilot, a second, a first officer, a navigator, an engineer, God knows what else. There's such a full staff on those planes. And when we got to England, I couldn't believe I was in England. It was the most beautiful evening. And we went to the Green Park Hotel on Off Moon Street. And I said to the guys, let's walk around London, let's experience London. And they said, honey, for God's sake, we walked across the Atlantic. We'll have dinner, we'll buy you a couple of drinks, tomorrow we'll take you around. And I said, if you guys think I'm going to sit here and drink on my first night in London. And I walked out down Off Moon Street, and I stood and I said, and that's Green Park, and I know Buckingham Palace is over there, and Trafalgar Square is that way, and there was a tap on my shoulder, and this lady with a load of makeup, a ratty coat, a long she had.
Practical magician.
I don't know.
It sounds good. It sounds good. Storytelling. But neither of us have explicit sex or violence in our books, so we're on reading lists, and you hear from people through emails, and it's very nice to hear from most people. But about a year ago, I get emails from my website, and one popped up, and it was a kid. He said, "My book report is due tomorrow. Could you answer these 25 questions?" So I wrote back and I said, "I'm home right now. Here's my phone number. I'd be happy to talk to you. Or else give me your number and I'll call you." I pressed send. I felt good about myself. He wrote back, "Please just answer the questions." So teachers always say, "I hope you didn't do that." But anyway, it's about what makes things scary, too, when usual becomes unusual. We belong to a writers group that meets the first Tuesday of every month. Harlan Coben's in it, Susan Isaacs, Linda Fairstein, Nelson DeMille. And we just talk about what we're doing, what we're writing. And one night, one writer, Warren Murphy, said, "Okay, you're alone in the house, in the middle of nowhere, it's 3 in the morning, pitch dark, all locked up. What's the scariest sound you could hear?" So someone said, "The scream, the screech of tires, glass breaking." He said, "No, you're alone, 3 in the morning, it's pitch dark, you're by yourself, and the toilet flushes." So that would be scary. That's scary. So continuing on that theme, 3 years ago when my mother and I were writing our last Christmas book, Dashing Through the Snow, at 5 o'clock my mother and John had to go to an event and they left. And I went to the back bedroom to get my stuff and packed up. I was going to go back to my apartment for the night in the city. And 10, 15 minutes passed, I was getting my things, and all of a sudden I heard the whir of the elevator in the house. And I was by myself, so I raced outside, called the Salvador police. They came over. I know, Luna had a story about this before too. And of course, I finally reached my mother, and she said, "Oh, the elevator goes back to home base on the 2nd floor after 15 minutes. I said, "Well, thanks for telling me that." So then, this morning, I was at her house by myself. I couldn't find the room. I'm looking all over the house. I go back to a back closet in the bedroom. It's a cedar closet. I open it up, don't see a room. I start to close it, and I hear, "How you doing?" I said, "What?" So I open the door. This is the first time we've ever used a prop. This was on the floor of the closet. And it started talking. I mean, can you imagine how terrifying now? I thought I was alone in the house. It was talking all the way over in the car. Now it's not going to say anything, but I want to use in a book somehow because I just heard a voice. And so there you go. There's our first view. Now what would you do? Shut up. That's the way I want. What? I'll put it down and then I'll start to talk. But anyway, that's, as a writer, scary things. As a writer, to hear a human voice come out of the closet. And anyway, there you go. Now we'll start. But, okay. Now,
neither one of us has ever used sex or violence. It's explicit. I never felt it was necessary. It was never. It was never a question of doing it. It was just natural because I've always felt that what is implied, the Alfred Hitchcock movies are still classics. Agatha Christie's movies are still classics. You never felt me, and I think